The massive space station called Olympus 7 slowly turned in the darkness of space. It was bigger than most cities on Earth, with towers and domes that stretched for miles. Two bright suns shone down on its metal surface, making it gleam like a jewel among the stars. Inside this giant structure, hundreds of alien beings had gathered for one of the most important meetings in galactic history. Ambassador David Wells walked through the long corridors of the station, his footsteps echoing. On the smooth floor, he was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him walked Commander Lisa Park, a younger woman with short black hair and a stern face. They both wore the blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps, but they felt very small in this place. Filled with creatures from across the galaxy, the aliens they passed were unlike anything most humans had ever seen. Some walked on 4 legs and had scales that changed color. Others floated in bubbles of glowing gas. There were beings made of what looked like living crystal, and creatures so tall they had to bend down to fit through the doorways. All of them stared at the 2 humans with curious eyes, and many of them whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music, or grinding stone or electronic beeps. Wells and Park finally reached the great council chamber. It was a huge round room with seats arranged in circles that went up and up like a giant stadium. In the center was a platform where speakers could address the assembly. The room buzzed with the sounds of 1,000 different voices speaking, in 1,000 different ways, as the humans took their assigned seats in a small section near the back. The noise gradually died down. A massive creature with 4 muscular arms and skin like black leather stepped onto the central platform. This was Ambassador Krell of the Thorian Empire, one of the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. His voice boomed across the chamber. Without any need for amplification, fellow members of the Galactic Council, Krell began, his forearms spreading wide in a dramatic gesture. Today we consider the petition of a new species that calls itself human, from a small world. They have named Earth. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing images of Earth and its primitive spacecraft. The pictures showed rockets that looked like metal tubes with fire coming out the bottom. They showed space stations that were tiny compared to the alien megastructures. They showed human soldiers carrying weapons that fired metal bullets instead of energy beams. Laughter began to ripple through the chamber. It started as small chuckles from a few delegates, but it quickly grew louder and louder until the entire room was filled with the sounds of alien amusement. Some beings made sounds like barking. Others created musical tones that somehow conveyed mockery. The crystal creatures chimed like broken bells. Krell waited for the laughter to die down before continuing. These humans have achieved faster than light travel, which is the minimum requirement for council consideration. However, as you can see from their technology, they are barely more advanced than animals. He gestured at the hologram, which now showed human cities. They still burn fossil fuels for energy. They fight wars with chemical explosives. Their spacecraft are held together with adhesive tape and powered by controlled explosions. More laughter filled the chamber. Wells felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he forced himself to sit still and listen. A new voice joined the discussion. It sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but somehow everyone in the chamber could understand the words. This was Quartz, the representative of the Zephorian Collective, a species of living crystal beings. Ambassador Krell speaks the truth, Quartz chimed. We have observed these humans for several of their years. They cannot even agree among themselves on basic matters. They wage war over resources that any civilized species could create in simple replication devices. They believe in invisible sky gods and make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. A new speaker rose from the seats. This one looked like a giant insect with wings that shimmered in the light. The Vorthon Hive has also studied these creatures, it buzzed. Their military tactics are crude and wasteful. They send soldiers to die in battles that could be won with proper technology. They know nothing of psychic warfare or dimensional combat. Wells finally stood up from his seat. His voice seemed very small in the huge chamber, but the translation devices made sure everyone could understand him. Honored delegates, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Humanity may be young compared to your ancient civilizations, but we have much to offer. We are adaptable, creative, and determined. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed weaker species. The laughter started again, but this time it was harsher. Krell's forearms waved dismissively. Survived? He boomed. You have barely crawled out of your own gravity well. You think survival on one small planet makes you ready for the challenges of galactic civilization? You are children playing with fire, and we are the adults who must protect you from burning down the neighborhood. Commander Park stood up beside Wells, her hands clenched into fists. We may be young, but we are not weak, she said firmly. Humanity has never backed down from a challenge, and we will not start now. This brought fresh waves of laughter from the assembly. A delegate that looked like a walking tree spoke up in a voice like rustling leaves. How charming. The little mammals think they are fierce. The formal vote was a mere formality. One by one, the delegates of the Galactic Council cast their votes. Some used electronic devices. Others spoke their choices aloud. A few changed colors to indicate their decision. But the result was the same every time. No. The final tally was announced by the Council's ancient leader, Supreme Chancellor Vox. His voice was old and tired, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. The petition of the species, known as humanity, is denied. Earth and its colonies will be granted protected status as a primitive species under Galactic Protocol 7. They will be allowed to develop at their own pace under the guidance and supervision of Council-approved civilizations. As the Council session ended, the various delegates began to file out of the chamber. Many of them continued to chuckle and whisper among themselves. Some pointed at the two humans and made comments in their alien languages. Krell approached the human delegation as they prepared to leave. His massive form towered over them, and his forearms moved in what might have been a gesture of condescension among his people. Do not be too disappointed, little ones, he said, his voice now taking on a tone that parents might use with upset children. The Council's decision is for your own good. The galaxy is a dangerous place, full of threats that your primitive minds cannot even imagine. Under our protection, your species will be safe to grow and learn. He paused, looking down at them with what might have been pity. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have learned to properly harness energy and evolve beyond your violent tendencies, you might reconsider your application. Until then, enjoy your small corner of space. Play with your chemical rockets and metal projectiles. We will watch over you and make sure nothing too dangerous disturbs your development. Miles wanted to say something to defend his species. More time, but Park put a hand on his arm. Her eyes told him it was time to go. They had said what they came to say, and they had received their answer. As the human delegation made their way back through the corridors of Olympus 7, they passed more groups of aliens. The whispers and laughter followed them wherever they went. They heard words in a dozen languages, but the meaning was always the same: primitive, backward, amusing. The journey back to their small transport ship felt like the longest walk of their lives, once they were safely aboard and heading back toward Earth. Wells finally allowed himself to slump in his chair. They think we're a joke, Park said quietly. Wells nodded slowly. Yes, they do. What do we tell the people back home? Wells was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars through the ship's viewport. When he finally spoke, his voice was harder than it had been in the council chamber. We tell them the truth. We tell them that the galaxy sees us as children who need protection. We tell them that our weapons are considered toys, and our achievements are seen as cute attempts at civilization. He turned to look at Park, and she saw something new in his tired eyes. Something that might have been anger, or determination, or both. And then we let them decide what they want to do about it. The small human ship continued its journey back to Earth, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the great space station Olympus 7 continued its slow rotation. Its alien occupants, I'm already forgetting about the amusing little species that had dared to ask for a seat at the grown-ups table. But in the depths of space, traveling toward a small blue planet that had been dismissed as primitive and harmless, two humans sat in silence and thought about what it meant to be underestimated. Yet somewhere in that silence, something dangerous began to grow. 6 months had passed since the humiliation at Olympus 7. The news of the Galactic Council's rejection had spread across Earth like wildfire, and the reactions had been exactly what anyone who knew humans might have expected. There had been anger, frustration, and hurt pride. But most importantly, there had been determination. Admiral Marcus Stone stood in the center of the war room deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The new Geneva military complex had been built into the mountain itself, its corridors and chambers carved from solid rock. This particular room was the heart of Earth's military planning, and today it was filled with some of the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Stone was a man in his 50s, with steel-gray hair and scars on his hands from his younger days as a fighter pilot. He had seen combat in 3 different wars, and had earned his rank through skill, courage, and an absolute refusal to give up when things looked impossible. Today, he needed all of those qualities. The walls of the war room were covered with displays, showing star charts, technical diagrams, and intercepted alien communications. Teams of analysts worked at computer terminals, processing the flood of intelligence that had been gathered since first contact with the galactic community. Everything they had learned painted the same picture. Humanity was hopelessly outmatched in a conventional conflict, but Admiral Stone had not spent his career fighting conventional conflicts. Dr. Rachel Kim stepped up to the central holographic display. She was a small woman, with quick, intelligent eyes, and the kind of mind that could see patterns where others saw only chaos. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology and technology, she had spent the last 6 months studying every piece of data they had collected about their galactic neighbors. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and confident despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. "We have completed our analysis of the major galactic civilizations. What we have found is both discouraging and encouraging." The hologram showed the technical specifications of a Thorian warship. It was massive, sleek, and bristling with weapons that could level continents. Its energy shields could deflect any conventional attack. Its faster-than-light drive could cross the galaxy in days rather than months. "The discouraging news is obvious," Kim continued. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in most areas. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses nearly impregnable by our current standards." She paused and touched a control. Display changed to show detailed scans of the aliens themselves. The Thorians with their forearms and massive bodies, the crystalline Zephyrians with their ability to communicate through harmonic frequencies, the insectoid Vorthans with their hive mind and psychic abilities. "But here is the encouraging news," Kim said, and for the first time in months, she smiled. "They have become predictable. All of these species have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They have established patterns, protocols, and standard procedures for everything they do. They fight wars according to established rules. They negotiate according to ancient traditions. They think according to logic patterns that have not changed in millennia." General Robert Hayes leaned forward in his chair. He was a large man with graying hair and the kind of voice that could be heard over artillery fire. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I am saying, General, that they have forgotten how to adapt. They see our primitive technology and dismiss it because it does not fit their established categories. They assume that because we use kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion, we must be inferior in all areas." Admiral Stone nodded slowly. "They do not know what they do not know." "Exactly," Kim said. "They have observed our public conflicts and our civilian technology, but they have not seen what we keep hidden." Stone stepped forward and activated a new series of displays. These showed projects that had been classified at the highest levels of government, weapon systems that existed only in underground bunkers, research facilities that did not appear on any public records. For decades, humanity had been preparing for threats that might come from the stars. "Operation Prometheus," Stone announced. "Named after the Greek god who stole fire from the heavens and gave it to humanity. For 30 years, we have been developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter advanced alien technology." The first display showed a device that looked like a simple metal sphere. Electromagnetic pulse weapons capable of disabling any electronic system within a 50-kilometer radius. The aliens rely heavily on their computer systems. Without them, their advanced ships become very expensive coffins. The next display showed what appeared to be a simple rocket. It's not much different from the primitive spacecraft the aliens had mocked. Kinetic bombardment platforms. No fancy energy weapons, no exotic particles. Just very heavy objects, moving very fast. Their energy shields are designed to deflect energy weapons. They are not designed to stop a tungsten rod traveling at 90% of light speed. Hayes whistled softly. That would punch through a battleship like a bullet through paper. It gets better, Stone continued. The display changed again, showing a complex network diagram. Quantum encrypted communication networks. The aliens have been trying to intercept our transmissions since first contact. What they do not know is that they have only been hearing what we want them to hear. Our real communications are absolutely secure. Captain Maria Santos raised her hand. She was a young officer who had been chosen for one of humanity's most dangerous assignments. Admiral, I have just returned from the Kepler reconnaissance mission. What I found out there supports everything Dr. Kim has said. Stone nodded for her to continue. The Thorian Empire has been expanding aggressively, Santos reported. The past 3 months alone, they have conquered 5 star systems. The pattern is always the same. They arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and then strip the planets of resources. The Galactic Council does nothing to stop them. Why not? Asked Dr. Kim. Because the Thorians are careful to only attack species that the Council has classified as primitive or protected. Just like us, Santos said grimly. The Council pretends to be a peacekeeping organization, but in reality, it is a protection racket. Join us and follow our rules, or become someone else's prey. The room fell silent as the implications sank. Admiral Stone walked over to the largest display and brought up a map of the local galactic region. Red markers showed Thorian-controlled systems, blue markers showed Council member worlds, and scattered throughout were yellow markers representing the primitive species under Council protection. The aliens made a mistake when they dismissed us, Stone said quietly. They assumed that because we look primitive, we think primitive. They assumed that because our technology appears simple, we are simple. He turned to face the assembled officers and scientists. They have never encountered a species like humanity. We are not ancient and set in our ways. Traditions and protocols that stretch back 10,000 years. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. General Hayes stood up, his chair scraping against the stone floor. Admiral. What are you proposing, Admiral? Stone's expression was grim but determined. The Thurians are planning to expand into the Ross sector next month. Intelligence indicates they will hit the Novan colonies first. 3 peaceful worlds with a combined population of 50 million beings. The Council will not intervene, Santos added. The Novans requested protection 6 months ago and were denied. Insufficient technological development, according to the official report. So we intervene, Stone said simply. The room erupted in surprised voices. This was beyond anything they had discussed before. They were talking about open warfare with an alien empire that could destroy Earth without breaking stride. Dr. Kim was the first to speak up. Admiral, with respect, the Thorians have over 200 warships in their battle fleet. We have maybe 30 vessels that could be considered combat ready. Numbers do not tell the whole story, Doctor, Stone replied. David had only a sling when he faced Goliath. This is not a Bible story, sir, Hayes said, though his tone was respectful. This is the real world, and in the real world, massive. Alien battleships tend to win fights against primitive human vessels. Stone smiled for the first time in months. It was not a pleasant smile. General, you are making the same mistake the aliens made. You are assuming that we will fight them the way they expect to be fought. He activated a new display showing tactical simulations that have been running on the military's most advanced computers. We will not meet them in open battle with our ships arranged in neat formations. We will not follow their rules of engagement. We'll not give them the kind of fight they understand. The simulations showed human vessels using hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles and employing weapons that the alien computers could not predict or counter. They showed EMP devices disabling entire fleets, kinetic weapons punching through supposedly impregnable defenses, and human pilots using maneuvers that no sane alien would attempt. "We will fight like humans," Stone continued.
Oh.
"We will be unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless. We will use every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, and every bit of cunning our species has developed over millions of years of surviving on a hostile world." Captain Santos nodded slowly. It could work. The alien ships are powerful, but they are also huge and slow. Our fighters are smaller and more maneuverable. If we can get close enough to use our new weapons, the risk is enormous, Dr. Kim pointed out. If we fail, Earth will be defenseless against retaliation. If we do nothing, Earth will eventually be conquered anyway, Stone replied. The Thorians will finish their expansion into the primitive sectors, and then they will come for us. Better to fight them now on our terms than wait for them to choose the time and place. General Hayes was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical displays. Finally, he spoke. "How long do we have to prepare?" 3 weeks, Santos answered. "The Thorian fleet will reach the Novan system in 3 weeks. Then we have 3 weeks to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of," Stone said. 3 weeks to prove that being primitive does not mean being weak." Around the room, at the faces of his officers and advisors, he saw doubt, fear, and uncertainty. But he also saw determination, courage, and something that the aliens had never encountered in their long, comfortable lives. He saw the human refusal to give up. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Stone said, his voice carrying the weight of history, "we are about to embark on the most important mission in human history. We are going to show an ancient, advanced, and arrogant galaxy that there are still a few surprises left in this universe. And if we fail?" asked Dr. Kim. Stone's smile grew wider and more dangerous. "And we fail fighting, which is the most human thing of all." The meeting broke up as officers and scientists hurried off to prepare for what might be humanity's first and last interstellar war. But as they left the war room, each of them carried with them the knowledge that they were part of something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time in thousands of years, primitive species was about to fight back. The Rigel system was burning, where once 3 peaceful worlds had orbited their gentle star. Now, only debris and emergency signals remained. The attack had been swift and brutal, exactly as Captain Maria Santos had predicted. The Thorian Empire had arrived with overwhelming force, demanding immediate surrender from the Novan colonies. The Novans had been a peaceful species, much like humans in appearance, but with pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. They had never developed weapons more advanced than simple hunting tools. Their greatest achievement had been a form of poetry that could be understood by any species, regardless of language. It had not been enough to save them. 3 massive Thorian warships hung in space like metal mountains. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect the output of a small star. Their sleek hulls gleamed with an alien beauty that hid their terrible purpose. On the bridge of the lead ship, Ambassador Krell stood watching the evacuation of the surviving Novans. His 4 powerful arms were crossed in satisfaction as transport ships carried the refugees to processing centers where they would be sorted by usefulness. The strong would become laborers in the Thorian mining operations. The intelligent would become technicians and clerks. The rest would be relocated to reservation planets where they could live out their lives in carefully monitored obscurity. "Another successful liberation," commented Commander Vask, Krell's military aide. "The galaxy is safer now that these primitive worlds are under proper supervision." Krell nodded absently. The conquest of the Novan system was just one small step in the Thorian Empire's expansion into what they called the primitive sectors. Soon, every backward species in this region of space would be under Thorian protection, contributing their resources to the greater good of galactic civilization. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we are receiving a priority transmission from the edge of the system." Krell frowned. "From whom?" All Novan vessels have been accounted for. Unknown, sir. The signature is not in our database. On the main screen, a new ship appeared. It was unlike anything in the Thorian fleet, where their vessels were smooth and organic-looking. This one was angular and industrial. It looked like it had been built in a factory rather than grown in. A bioforge. Weapons of unfamiliar design jutted from its hull like metal thorns. "This is Captain Tom Bradley of the EU's Defiance," came a voice over the communication channel. "You are ordered to withdraw immediately from this system and release all prisoners." The bridge crew of the Thorian flagship burst into laughter. The ship on their screen was tiny compared to their massive warships, no bigger than one of their shuttlecraft. Its primitive-looking weapons could not possibly threaten their advanced shields. "Human," Krell said, his voice dripping with amusement. "You are even more foolish than your species' reputation suggests. You dare to threaten the mighty Thorian Empire with that pathetic vessel." "Oh, I am not threatening you," Bradley replied calmly. "I am giving you a chance to leave peacefully. This is your only warning." Krell's laughter boomed across the bridge. "Commander Vask, please demonstrate to our primitive friend why the Thorian Empire rules this sector of space." The second Thorian warship, the Destroyer of Worlds, moved into position. Its main plasma cannon began to charge, energy building to levels that could crack a moon in half. The target lock engaged on the small human vessel, and every tactical computer confirmed that the upcoming shot would vaporize the tiny ship completely. A fire ordered Commander Vass. The plasma bolt that erupted from the Thorian weapon was beautiful in its terrible power. It streaked across space like a miniature sun, carrying enough energy to destroy a small city. It struck the human ship directly in the center of its hull, and nothing happened. The energy simply vanished, absorbed by some kind of defensive system that the Thorian computers could not identify. The human ship sat in space, completely undamaged, as if the massive plasma cannon had fired nothing more dangerous than a flashlight beam. "Impossible," whispered Vask. "Adaptive armor," Bradley explained, his voice still maddeningly calm. "We studied your plasma weapons for months. Turns out they are not so scary when you know how they work." Before anyone on the Thorian ships could react, the human vessel launched its own attack. But instead of energy weapons, it fired what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. The Thorian tactical computers dismissed them as primitive kinetic rounds that would be easily deflected by their shields. The first projectile struck the Destroyer of Worlds amidships. The energy shield flared and held for exactly 1 microsecond, before the tungsten rod punched through it like it was made of paper. The projectile continued through the ship's hull, through its main reactor, and out the other side, leaving a perfectly round hole that glowed white-hot at the edges. The massive warship shuddered once, and then exploded in a fireball that briefly outshone the system's star. The bridge of Krell's flagship fell silent. 200 years of Thorian military doctrine had just been shattered by a single shot from a primitive human weapon. The impossible had happened. The invincible had been destroyed. Energy shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Bradley continued, as if he were giving a lecture to children. They do not work very well against solid objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. The third Thorian warship, the Cosmic Tyrant, began to move toward the human vessel. Its captain had obviously decided that a closer-range engagement might be more effective. The ship's secondary weapons opened fire, sending dozens of smaller plasma bolts toward the tiny human craft. The human ship moved like nothing the Thorians had ever seen, instead of the stately, predictable maneuvers of proper starship combat. It twisted and spun through space like a living thing. Plasma bolts that should have been impossible to dodge somehow missed their target by meters. The ship's pilot seemed to know where each shot would be before it was fired. "How is it moving like that?" demanded Vask. The answer came in the form of a dozen more human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Each one was as ugly and primitive-looking as the first, but they moved with the same impossible agility. They swarmed around the massive Thorian vessels like angry wasps attacking a giant. "Multiple targets confirmed," reported the Thorian sensor operator, his voice shaking. 47 vessels and counting, but these were not the large warships that the Thorians understood. These were small, fast attack craft that used tactics no civilized species would ever employ. They came in low and fast, fired their primitive weapons at point-blank range, and then disappeared before the Thorian guns could target them. The Cosmic Tyrant's shields failed under the concentrated kinetic bombardment. Its hull began to crack and buckle as tungsten rods punched through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. Secondary explosions bloomed along its length as critical systems were destroyed. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the human commander." "Put it through," Krell ordered, his voice no longer confident. Bradley's image appeared on the main screen. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a simple uniform that looked like it had been made in any number of factories across human space. There was nothing special about him, nothing that marked him as a great warrior or tactical genius. He looked like an ordinary human doing. "An ordinary job?" Ambassador Krell, Bradley said. "I believe you wanted to speak with me." "Your weapons," Krell gasped. "They bypassed our shields completely. How is this possible?" Bradley shrugged. "You made an assumption. So assume that because our technology looks primitive, it is primitive. Railguns firing depleted uranium. Rounds do not care about your energy shields. Nuclear missiles do not need to be sophisticated to be effective. But the Council protocols state that all civilized species must follow established rules of engagement." Krell protested. Bradley's expression did not change. "We never agreed to your protocols. We never asked to join your club," he decided. "We were too primitive to have a voice in galactic affairs, remember? The Cosmic Tyrant finally succumbed to the human attack. Its reactor went critical, and the massive ship vanished in a burst of light that temporarily blinded the sensors of every remaining vessel in the system." "This is impossible," Krell repeated, as if saying it enough times would make it true. "The Thorian Empire has ruled this sector for over 1,000 years. Our technology is superior. Our tactics are proven. Our victory is inevitable." "Tactics are predictable," Bradley corrected. "Your technology is impressive, but inflexible. And your victory was never inevitable. It was just unchallenged." More human ships were arriving now, but these were different from the attack craft. They were larger, bulkier vessels that moved with purpose toward the Novan refugee ships. As Krell watched in growing horror, the humans began to dock with the transports and board them. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Rescuing the survivors." Bradley replied simply, "The Novans asked for our protection. We are giving it to them. You cannot do this." The Galactic Council has strict rules about interference with approved military operations. Bradley's smile was cold and dangerous. The Galactic Council refused to protect the Novans. You cannot claim legal authority over people you abandoned. The human rescue ships began to move away from the transport vessels, taking the Novan refugees with them. The Thorian crews, faced with human boarders carrying weapons they had never seen before, had offered no resistance. "Besides," Bradley continued, "you made it very clear that humans are too primitive to understand galactic law. So we are going to do what primitives do. We are going to fight for what we believe is right." Krell's flagship was now alone in the system, surrounded by human vessels that moved like schools of fish around a wounded whale. His tactical computers could not predict their movements or counter their weapons. Everything he had been taught about space combat was useless against these impossible humans. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "We want you to leave," Bradley said. "We want you to take your ship and go back to your empire. We want you to tell your leaders that the primitive sectors are no longer undefended. And if we refuse?" Bradley gestured toward the debris field that had once been two of the most powerful warships in the Thorian fleet. "Then you join your friends over there." Krell looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw fear, confusion, and the dawning realization that everything they had believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. The primitive humans had not just defeated them, they had made it look easy. "This is not over," Krell said, trying to recover some of his dignity. "The Thorian Empire will not forget this insult." "Good," Bradley replied. "Make sure you remember it clearly when you explain to your superiors how two of their best warships were destroyed by primitive humans using primitive weapons." The Thorian flagship began to move away from the battle site, its engines straining to achieve faster than light. Speed. As it prepared to jump away, Krell sent one final transmission. You have made an enemy today, human. The Thorian Empire has resources beyond your comprehension. We will return with a fleet that will darken your skies. Bradley's response was simple and delivered with the same calm tone he had used throughout the entire engagement. We will be waiting. The Thorian ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the human fleet alone in the Rigel system. Around them, the wreckage of two massive warships drifted in the darkness. Testament to what happened when an ancient advanced civilization finally encountered something it did not understand. Captain Bradley stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the rescue ships tend to the Novan survivors. His communications officer, Lieutenant Beth Morgan, approached with a concerned expression. Sir, she said quietly, long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout the Thorian Empire. It looks like they are mobilizing their entire fleet. Bradley nodded calmly. How many ships? Conservative estimate? 2,000 warships? Sir, then we had better get ready for a real fight, Bradley said. Send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell him that the galaxy has officially stopped laughing at us. As the human fleet prepared to depart the Rigel system, taking the rescued Novans to safety, word of the impossible battle began to spread across the galaxy. The primitive species from Earth had done the unthinkable. They had defeated the mighty Thorian Empire in open combat. The laughter that had echoed through the halls of Olympus 7 was beginning to die away, replaced by something that galactic civilization had not felt in thousands of years. Fear. The great chamber of Olympus 7 had never seen chaos like this. For over 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had conducted its business with dignity, order, and the kind of slow deliberation that came from having unlimited time and unchallenged power. Today, that ancient calm was shattered. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy faster than the translation systems could process them. Holographic displays showed battle footage that defied everything the council members thought they knew about warfare. Primitive human ships, ugly and angular, tore through the sleek vessels of the galaxy's most powerful empires like knives through silk. Supreme Chancellor Vox sat in his ancient chair at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form flickering. With colors that indicated deep distress, he was over 4,000 years old, had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, and had never seen anything like what was happening now. Order, called out, his voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic systems. We will have order in this assembly. But order was the last thing anyone was thinking about. The Altarian representative, a being that looked like a mass of writhing tentacles in an environmental suit, was screaming accusations at the Thorian delegation. Your incompetent military has brought disaster upon us all. How could you lose? 3 battle fleets to a species that barely knows how to build proper spacecraft. Ambassador Krell stood among his fellow Thorians, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. The proud warrior who had dismissed humanity 6 months ago now looked broken and confused. The reports from the front lines painted a picture that his mind refused to accept. 17 star systems had fallen to human forces in the past month. Not conquered in the traditional sense, but liberated. Every world the humans touched was freed from whatever empire had been exploiting it. The freed populations were not enslaved or relocated. Instead, they were offered protection, trade agreements, and something that had become rarer and rarer in the galaxy: genuine choice about their own futures. They fight like madmen, Krell said, his voice barely audible above the chaos. They ignore every rule of civilized warfare. They use weapons that should not work. They employ tactics that make no strategic sense. Zephyrian delegate, Quartz, chimed in with harmonics that sounded like breaking crystal. Our psychic battle networks are useless against them. They generate some kind of mental static that disrupts all telepathic coordination. Our hive mind tactical systems cannot function. A new voice cut through the noise. It was Admiral Marcus Stone, standing calmly in the section that had once been reserved for primitive species seeking council approval. The human delegation was no longer asking for permission to speak. It earned the right through force of arms. Honored delegates, Stone said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Perhaps I can explain what you are experiencing. The chamber fell silent. Every being present turned to look at the human who had somehow managed to turn their ordered galaxy upside down in a matter of weeks. "You are confused because you have forgotten something important," Stone continued. "You have forgotten what it means to adapt. For thousands of years, you have fought the same wars in the same ways. You have used the same tactics, the same strategies, the same thinking that brought you victory in ages past." He gestured to the displays showing human vessels in combat. The ships moved in ways that violated every principle of proper space combat. They ignored formation discipline, attacked from impossible angles, and used weapons that should have been useless against advanced technology.
Oh.
"But we are not fighting your wars," Stone said.
Oh, we are fighting our war.
"Using our methods, according to our rules, and our only rule is that we win." Dr. Rachel Kim stepped forward to join Stone at the speaking platform. She looked small and harmless next to the massive alien delegates, but her voice carried the weight of scientific authority.
Oh.
"Made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity," she said. "You observed our technology and concluded that we were primitive. You watched our conflicts and decided we were violent and chaotic. But you never asked the important question: why do we fight the way we fight?" The holographic displays changed to show images of Earth, not the peaceful blue marble that most aliens remembered, but the harsh, dangerous world that had forged humanity. Massive storms that could level continents, ice ages that lasted for millennia, volcanic eruptions that darkened the sky for years, disease outbreaks that killed millions. "Earth tried to kill us for millions of years," Kim continued. "Every day was a struggle for survival against a planet that had no mercy and no pity. We learned to adapt or die. We learned to use whatever worked, regardless of whether it was elegant or proper or civilized." She pointed to footage of human soldiers in combat. "You see chaos where we see flexibility. See primitive weapons where we see tools that cannot be countered by energy shields. You see violation of proper tactics where we see the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The chamber erupted in angry voices again. The Vorthan delegate, a large insectoid creature, buzzed loudly. "These humans are terrorists. They attack without warning, ignore diplomatic protocols, and refuse to follow established rules of engagement." Admiral Stone nodded calmly. "Guilty as charged. We attack without warning because warning gives the enemy time to prepare. We ignore diplomatic protocols because your protocols are designed to maintain the status quo while the strong exploit the weak. And we refuse to follow your rules of engagement because your rules are designed to ensure that advanced civilizations always win." A new delegate rose from the assembly. This was Ambassador Nira of the Novan Republic, one of the species the humans had recently liberated from Thorian rule. She was small and pale blue, with large eyes that held a sadness born of centuries of oppression. "If I may speak," she said quietly, "I would like to tell this assembly what human liberation actually means." Chancellor Vox nodded for her to continue, though many delegates grumbled about allowing a primitive species to address the council. "When the Thorians conquered our worlds," Nira began, "they told us it was for our own good. They said we were too primitive to govern ourselves, too backward to make our own decisions. They took our young to work in their factories. They stripped our planets of resources. They told us we should be grateful for their protection." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "When we asked the Galactic Council for help, we were told that the Thorians were a member in good standing and that their actions were within established protocols. We were advised to accept our situation and be thankful that we were being guided by our superiors." She turned to look directly at Admiral Stone. "When the humans came, they did not tell us what was best for us. They asked us what we wanted, and we said we wanted freedom. They fought for it. We said we wanted to choose our own path. They helped us find it. When we asked for protection, they gave it without asking for anything in return." Nira faced the assembly again. "You call them primitive, but they are the first advanced species to treat us as equals rather than children or resources. We call them violent, but they have brought peace to 17 star systems that knew only exploitation and fear. The Thorian delegation tried to interrupt, but Chancellor Vox raised his hand for silence. Furthermore, Nira continued, the humans have offered to share their technology freely with any species that wants it. Not trade it for resources or loyalty, but share it. They have established medical stations that treat anyone who needs help, regardless of species or political affiliation. They have set up schools that teach scientific methods alongside respect for cultural differences. The impact of her words rippled through the chamber. This was not the behavior of a conquering army. This was the behavior of a species that genuinely wanted to help others, even at cost to themselves. Admiral Stone spoke again, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. You want to know what we want? Want the galaxy to stop pretending that might makes right? Want civilizations to be judged by how they treat their weakest members, not by how advanced their weapons are. We want species to be free to choose their own destinies without fear of conquest or exploitation. He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces. And we want you to start acting like the advanced civilizations you claim to be, instead of the galactic bullies you have become. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council was being forced to confront the gap between their high-minded ideals and their actual behavior. Chancellor Vox finally spoke, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of centuries. And if we refuse, if we maintain that the current system serves the galaxy well, Stone's smile was not pleasant. Then you will discover that humanity is very good at changing systems that do not work. We have had a lot of practice. The threat was clear, but it was not the crude intimidation that the council members expected from a primitive species. This was the calm statement of fact from beings who had already proven they could back up their words with action. Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his massive form trembling with suppressed rage. You cannot dictate terms to the entire galaxy. You are one small species from one insignificant world. You are right, Stone acknowledged. We are one small species. But we are not alone anymore. The chamber's displays lit up with new images. Ships from dozens of previously primitive species, all flying in formation with human vessels. The Novans, the Kepler colonists, the Rigel survivors, and many others had joined what was being called the Human Defense Alliance. Dr. Kim stepped forward again. The galaxy is changing, whether you accept it or not. The old system of exploitation disguised as protection is ending. You can adapt to the new reality, or you can be swept aside by it. But either way, Admiral Stone added, the change is coming. The question is whether you want to be part of building something better, or if you prefer to cling to a system that has already failed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council continued for 18 more hours. When it finally ended, nothing had been formally resolved. No votes had been taken, no declarations had been made, no treaties had been signed. No. But everyone in that chamber knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The primitive species from the small blue planet had not just challenged the established order. They had shown that there was an alternative to it, and for the first time in thousands of years, the mighty Galactic Council was genuinely afraid of what the future might bring. 2 years had passed since the emergency session that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. The changes that followed had been swift, dramatic, and irreversible. The galaxy that had once been dominated by ancient empires and rigid hierarchies was now something entirely different. Ambassador David Wells walked through the corridors of Harmony Station, the new diplomatic facility that orbited the neutral world of Haven Prime. Unlike the imposing grandeur of Olympus 7 with its towering spires and intimidating architecture, Harmony Station had been designed with a different philosophy in mind. The corridors were wide and welcoming, with viewing ports that showed the peaceful blue-green world below. Art from dozens of different species decorated the walls, and the soft lighting made every being feel comfortable regardless of their homeworlds. Environment. Wells was older now, his hair completely gray, and his face marked by the stress of 2 years of constant negotiation and diplomacy. But there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Hope. The man who had once been humiliated in front of the Galactic Council now served as humanity's senior ambassador to the new Galactic Cooperation Alliance. The name change from Council to Alliance had been more than symbolic. The old system of membership based on technological advancement and military power had been replaced by something revolutionary, voluntary cooperation based on mutual benefit and shared values. Any species could join regardless of their level of technology. As long as they agreed to basic principles of non-aggression and mutual aid, Wells entered the main conference room where the latest crisis was being addressed. The Andromeda sector. Plague had appeared 3 months ago, affecting 17 different species across 40 star systems. Under the old council system, each empire would have protected its own territory and left the primitive species to fend for themselves. Under the new alliance, every member contributed what they could to the solution. At the central table, Dr. Rachel Kim was coordinating the medical response with representatives from species that 2 years ago had been bitter enemies. To her left sat Dr. Thane, a Thorian bioengineer whose forearms moved with practiced precision as he manipulated genetic sequences on his portable laboratory equipment. To her right was Crystal Singer Harmony, a Zephyrian whose crystalline body resonated with frequencies that could accelerate cellular healing. The human vaccine base is showing promising results, Kim reported to the assembled delegates. We need the Thurian enzyme synthesis techniques to mass produce it, and the Zephyrian harmonic enhancement to make it effective across multiple species. Dr. Thane nodded, his manner now respectful rather than condescending. My people have contributed. Our most advanced biosynthesis facilities, the production should be complete within days rather than months. Crystal Singer Harmony chimed with pure musical tones that the translation systems converted to words. The healing frequencies have been calibrated for each affected species. We estimate 95% effectiveness across all biological types. Wells smiled as he watched the cooperation that would have been impossible under the old system. The transformation had not been easy. The collapse of the Thorian Empire had been particularly traumatic, as their entire society had been built around the concept of ruling over lesser species. But Admiral Stone had been true to his word. The humans had helped rather than conquered, offering economic assistance and technological exchange to help the Thorians rebuild their civilization on more sustainable foundations. The Zephyrians had adapted more easily, their collective consciousness making them naturally inclined toward cooperation once they understood the benefits. The crystalline beings had become some of the Alliance's most effective mediators, their harmonic communication allowing them to facilitate understanding between species that had never been able to work together before. But perhaps the most remarkable change had been in the smaller species, the ones the old council had dismissed as primitive or irrelevant. The Novans had become expert terraforming specialists, their gentle touch with planetary ecosystems proving invaluable in restoring worlds damaged by centuries of exploitation. The Kepler colonists had developed new forms of sustainable technology that worked in harmony with natural systems rather than dominating them. Captain Maria Santos entered the conference room carrying the latest intelligence reports. She now held the rank of admiral and commanded the Alliance Defense Force, a multi-species organization that prioritized protection and peacekeeping over conquest and intimidation. The Outer Rim pirates have been dealt with, she reported to the Assembly, joint task force from 6 different species, no casualties, all stolen cargo returned to its rightful owners. This too was part of the new reality. The Alliance Defense Force did not wage wars of conquest or maintain empires through force. Instead, they responded to requests for help from member species and focused on protecting the weak rather than expanding the power of the strong. Ambassador Wells took his seat at the table as the medical emergency session concluded. The plague response had been organized, funded, and deployed in less than a week. Under the old council system, the bureaucratic processes alone would have taken months. Now then, Wells said, calling the next session to order, we have several applications for Alliance membership to consider. The first application came from the Hegemony of Worlds, one of the old council's founding members. Representative, a being called Prime Minister Nexus, looked uncomfortable as he addressed the assembly. The hegemony had spent centuries ruling over client species and extracting tribute from weaker civilizations. Now they were asking to join an organization that explicitly rejected such practices. The hegemony acknowledges that our past behavior has not always met the standards expected of alliance members, Nexus said carefully. However, we have implemented significant reforms and wish to contribute to the new galactic order. Admiral Santos reviewed the intelligence reports on her tablet. The reforms appear genuine, she said. The client species have been granted independence. The tribute system has been abolished. And the former subject worlds are reporting significant improvements in living conditions. Dr. Kim nodded. The hegemony has also shared their advanced medical technology freely with the plague response effort.
Oh.
Their research facilities have been invaluable. The vote was unanimous to accept the hegemony's application, though with a probationary period to ensure their reforms were permanent rather than temporary. The second application was more controversial. Stellar Empire of Vega had been one of the most aggressive expansionist powers under the old system. Their military had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. Now they claim to have embraced the Alliance's principles of cooperation and mutual respect. General Robert Hayes, now serving as the Alliance's military advisor, shook his head grimly. Intelligence reports indicate that the vegan military is still actively suppressing independence movements on at least 12 worlds. Their application appears to be an attempt to gain legitimacy while continuing their old practices. The debate that followed was intense but civilized. It's unlike the shouting matches that had characterized the old council meetings. Alliance discussions focused on evidence and principle rather than power and intimidation. In the end, the vegan application was rejected, but with an offer to reconsider once concrete evidence of genuine reform was provided. As the session continued, Wells reflected on how far they had all come. The transformation of galactic civilization had not happened overnight, and it had not been without cost. There had been conflicts, misunderstandings, and setbacks. Some species had chosen to remain outside the Alliance system, clinging to the old ways of dominance and exploitation. The momentum was clearly toward cooperation rather than competition. Trade flourished between species that had once been enemies. Scientific research advanced faster when knowledge was shared freely rather than hoarded as a source of power. Cultural exchange enriched everyone as species learned from each other's perspectives and experiences. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen via subspace communication from Earth. He looked tired but satisfied as he delivered his monthly report on Alliance military activities. The Defense Force has responded to 47 requests for assistance this month, he reported. Piracy incidents are down 60% from last year. Border conflicts have decreased by 80%. Most importantly, we have not lost a single-member world to conquest or forced annexation. The statistics spoke for themselves. The galaxy was becoming a safer, more prosperous place under the Alliance system than it had ever been under the old Council's rule. But perhaps the most telling change was in the reactions of the galaxy's youngest species. New civilizations achieving faster-than-light travel were no longer met with condescension and dismissal. Instead, they were welcomed with genuine enthusiasm and offered assistance in developing their capabilities. The latest such species was from a world called Sunrise, whose inhabitants resembled tall, graceful plants that could move and think. Their technology was indeed primitive by galactic standards, but their applications for membership had been approved unanimously. They brought with them new perspectives on sustainable development and biological harmony that enriched the alliances. Understanding of what civilization could be. Wells watched as the Sunrise delegate, a being called Growing Toward Light, participated in discussions about agricultural assistance for famine-stricken worlds. The plant-like aliens' insights into soil chemistry and crop rotation were proving invaluable, demonstrating once again that advancement came in many forms. As the day's sessions concluded, Wells found himself standing at one of the station's viewing ports. Looking down at Haven Prime, the world below was a testament to what cooperation could accomplish. Once a barren rock with a toxic atmosphere, it had been transformed through the joint efforts of dozens of species into a garden world where any form of life could thrive. Admiral Santos joined him at the viewport, her own expression thoughtful as she watched the sunset paint the planets, clouds, in brilliant colors. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had accepted the Council's decision?" she asked. "If we had just stayed in our corner of space and accepted our place as a protected primitive species?" Wells considered the question carefully. "I think about it often," he said finally. "The galaxy would still be ruled by fear and exploitation. Billions of beings would still be suffering under systems designed to keep them powerless, and humanity would have remained exactly what the Council said: we were primitive, violent, and irrelevant. Instead," Wells smiled as he watched the lights of the planet's cities begin to twinkle in the growing darkness. "Instead, we changed everything. Not by becoming like them, but by showing them a better way to be themselves." A new message appeared on Santos's communicator. Another request for assistance, this time from a species called the star whales, whose migration routes were being disrupted by illegal mining operations. The Alliance would respond, as they always did, with whatever help was needed. "The galaxy laughed at us once," Wells said quietly. "They thought we were nothing more than violent primitives who would eventually destroy ourselves or be destroyed by someone stronger." Santos nodded. "And now they are learning that true strength does not come from the ability to dominate others. It comes from the willingness to help others become stronger themselves." As Harmony Station continued its orbit around Haven Prime, carrying representatives from over 300 different species working together toward common goals, the galaxy settled into another peaceful night. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, new civilizations were taking their first steps toward the stars, knowing that when they arrived, they would be welcomed rather than dismissed. The laughter that had once echoed through the halls of Olympus 7 had long since faded away, replaced by something far more powerful and lasting: the sound of different voices working together in harmony, building a future that none of them could have created alone. Humanity had struck back not with hatred or revenge, but with something the galaxy had forgotten how to give: hope.